What? Yeah, I'm just trying to figure stuff out.
Okay, so in the last chapter, what did we talk about?
Abolition.
Talked about abolitionists.
Reformation. Temperance.
What was that?
Change. Reformation.
Reformation.
Oh.
Good. So, what was it that you said? Like,
Change. Oh, I said temperance.
temperance. We did talk about temperance.
The second Great Awakening.
Good. We're talking about a lot of change, like what Xander said. A lot of change. So you have the abolitionists, you have the Second Great Awakening talking about temperance. So a lot of people are changing the way that they think. Chapter 17, is this going to be about the Civil War?
Almost. No.
Almost.
Toward the Civil War.
Toward the end of this, we'll be getting into the Civil War. So we're still looking at causes for the Civil War. Now, what do we know about the Civil War? Why were people fighting?
I just said people fought
Because I wanted to insert.
America wasn't unified, they were arguing, so.
Good. That's actually a really good way to put it. Did y'all hear what Jonathan said?
Something about.
Say it one more time.
I said America isn't unified and they are constantly fighting.
Good. So America isn't unified. What does it mean to not be unified, Zoe?
Together, you're not together as like a country.
Good. So to not be together, to be apart. So we're going to talk about reasons why we were not unified, why we were broken apart. There's a search for a compromise. And Noah, what is a compromise? What's the best way to describe a compromise?
Probably just come to an agreement.
What was that?
Come to an agreement.
To come to an agreement, possibly.
Solution.
Solution,
To the problem.
possibly.
Each side has to sacrifice something they want.
Good. So each side has to sacrifice something that they want. That's how a compromise is formed. So both sides give up something. And because of that, you can have a compromise. You can have an agreement. Now, there is one specific thing. If you know anything about the Civil War, what was it fought over? What have you probably been taught that it was fought over?
Slavery.
A lot of people say slavery.
North and South.
North and South,
States' rights.
what do you, good, so states' rights. North and South, states' rights. So, some people say states' rights, some people say slavery. With Mr. Jones and I teaching, we tend to lean more towards, what would you say, Mr. Jones?
States' rights.
States' rights. So states' rights. But right here, we're specifically going to be talking about slavery. The argument over slavery, it's gone on for years and years. And there was something known as the, what? Missouri Compromise. Remember anything about the Missouri Compromise, Meredith?
No.
No? Who remembers the Missouri Compromise? Besides Jonathan.
I might slightly.
Yeah. What do you think?
It's where when a territory wants to be a state and they want to be a slave or a free state, they have to have the other to make it equal.
To make it equal, to preserve the what? The balance. So you're preserving the balance in Congress. So, Missouri wanted to be what kind of state? Slave state. So Missouri couldn't go into the Union because what would that do to the balance?
There would be more slave states if they were free.
Good. There'd be more slave states than there would be free. Do you remember the other part of the Missouri Compromise? Which other state had to come in?
Texas.
Oh, Arkansas.
No.
Oklahoma.
Huh?
Maine.
Maine. And Maine came in as what?
A free state.
Maine came in as a free state. So with Missouri as a slave state and Maine as a free state, we preserved that balance. So we're looking back at the Missouri Compromise. It preserved the balance in the Senate years before. But now, I get to mess with this again. I missed this. Let's see. Which one is it?
That one right there. That's it.
Okay, there we go. So all of this territory, what is that known as?
Louisiana Purchase.
Louisiana Purchase. So this throws a kink into this idea of preserving a balance. Because we're getting more and more people in this area, and eventually this territory is going to become what?
State.
They're going to become states. So what are we going to do as far as the free and the slave states? So there's a big debate that's beginning to come about. With Polk as president and Texas wanting to join the U.S., slavery became an important issue once more. Because Texas wanted to come in as a what state?
Slave.
As a slave state. Was Texas able to just jump into the Union? No. We had to wait for another state to become a free state. So it's all about preserving this balance. The California and New Mexico territories, and we got all of this area right here. That just adds to the debate. We have more land, more territory, so what are we going to do with that territory when they become states? So there's different views. After the new lands were acquired, David Wilmot introduced a, how would you pronounce that, Mr. Jones? Just make
Which
sure
one,
I'm pronouncing
proviso?
it correct. Proviso.
Wilmot Proviso.
And would you mind explaining that real quick?
A proviso is not a law, but it's a recommendation that has the force of the law. Is there anything that you are recommended to do, but it's not written down? In my house, my mom raised me, and it really was great in the military. Every morning I had to get up and make my bed. I'm 57 years old, and every morning I make my bed when I get up. I have to wait till my wife gets out, but I still make my bed. It's a proviso, something that has the weight of the law, but it's not the law. It's a recommendation that you follow it and you do it. Can you think of something that you should do? That doesn't mean making a bed, but something you should do. The dishes. If you're the type, some parents in your household, when mom serves you a meal, what are you required to do when you finish eating? Take it to the sink. Don't expect someone else to carry it for you. That could be a proviso. It's just sort of a requirement that's not written down. It has the weight of the law, but it's not law.
Thank you. So David Wilmot introduced this Wilmot Proviso, and it said that any of this land that we received from Mexico would ban slavery. So there would be no slavery in this new land that we acquired from Mexico. John C. Calhoun, however, he proposed that neither Congress nor any territorial government
Could be.
could ban slavery. Good job. Have you ever heard of John C. Calhoun before?
Yeah.
What do you know about it?
He was vice president, or president one time.
Good. What up? Anybody else know anything?
He believed in the states' rights. For the South or something.
Good. He believed in what?
States' rights.
In states' rights. So, John C. Calhoun is saying that Congress nor any territorial government could ban slavery. Basically, give the rights to the states, or in this case, to the territory. Neither bill passed. Neither one passed. Neither the Wilmot Proviso or John C. Calhoun's proposal. Neither one passed. So the Whigs turned to someone named Taylor. Who's Taylor?
Taylor Martin.
Zachary Taylor. Zachary Taylor. And we've talked a little bit about Zachary Taylor in the past. Remember anything about him, Caden?
He was a general.
He was a general. Do we see a lot of generals become presidents?
Yes.
Zach?
George Washington.
George Washington. Good. Grant. Yeah, we're gonna get on Grant later. And then Jackson. So there's a lot of generals that actually do become presidents. The Whigs turned to Taylor as their presidential candidate. But he does something that's a little strange. He actually doesn't take a stand on the issue. The issue is what? What would you say, Zach? The whole issue that we're talking about. It's all revolving around what practice? What institution? Slavery. And so we're trying to figure out, should this territory have slavery or should it not have slavery? Should it be free or should it be slave? So Taylor actually doesn't take a stand on the issue. He doesn't say whether he believes in slavery or he doesn't believe in slavery. Why would he do this?
Because he didn't want to be accused, like falsely accused of one way or another. Like the Lovejoy guy.
Not taking, I can see where you're going. What were you gonna say, Noah?
I was gonna say, like, if he's not against slavery, the South could attack him and not vote for him, but if he just doesn't agree with any, like, if he doesn't believe in anything, that maybe they'll just all vote for him instead of voting for
Possibly.
somebody.
What's gonna happen if he goes for slavery? Who's he gonna gain support from? If he's for slavery,
South.
for the South, who's he gonna lose support from? Now, what if he says that he's against slavery? He's gonna get support from North. He's gonna lose support from who?
South.
The South. So either way, you're going to gain support or lose support. Zachary Taylor does not take a stand on this issue. And we'll see what happens in just a sec. There's a party that forms known as the Free Soil Party. And it formed to support the opposition. What's the opposition? Anthony? Opposition. If you oppose something, that means that you are what? You are against it. Good. So they oppose slavery. They're against slavery. And they have this motto that says, free soil, free speech, free labor, and free men. And they chose this man right here that we talked about several times in the past. What's his name? Martin Van Buren. They choose Martin Van Buren as their candidate. So sounds good. They're against slavery. They have a presidential candidate. But are people going to be quick to vote for Martin Van Buren? Why? What was it? You said you know what he does? What do we know about Martin Van Buren?
Didn't help during reception or
The Depression.
depression.
Yeah. So he didn't help a lot during this recession and then the Depression. So Martin Van Buren, did he help the U.S.? Did he hurt the U.S.? What? Huh?
Heard it.
He kind of hurt the U.S. He didn't help out. He believed in something known as hands-off.
Laissez-faire.
Laissez-faire, good. So he believed in a laissez-faire form of government, where the government doesn't really have any kind of say, or not really say. They don't really
Take part.
take part. Thank you. They don't take part. So the Free Soil Party chooses Martin Van Buren as their candidate. So it's between the Whigs and Zachary Taylor, and the Free Soil Party, Martin Van Buren. The Whigs under Taylor win this election. So Zachary Taylor is now the President of the United States, and the Whigs have control. This is going to lead us to a new compromise. Due to growing abolitionism meaning what, Macy?
Slavery, something to do with slavery.
Has something to do with slavery.
Slavery.
Good. So getting rid of slavery. So this belief in getting rid of slavery is growing. So Southerners wanted a stronger national fugitive slave laws. Fugitive slave laws. Have you ever heard of that before?
Yes.
What are fugitive slave laws?
I don't want to say, like, the ones that.
Only for they're not.
Have you ever heard of the word fugitive before?
Yes.
What's a fugitive?
Like, someone that runs away from the.
Good. So a fugitive is someone who runs away. Most times when you think of a fugitive, you think of a criminal. In this case, they're talking about slaves that run away. So they want stronger national fugitive slave laws. Which means that, Jonathan, if you are up north, you're working up north, working on a farm, and you see a slave, or you see a black person, it would be an African American. If you see an African American running across your field, what are you going to think? Are you going, just what's going through your mind? You're in the north, yes.
He keep running
Why?
because he ain't my problem.
It's not your problem. If you see an African American up north, would you think that he was a slave? Do you think he was free?
He probably, I don't know, because there are many slaves and free.
There are many slaves and free.
Like if you're right on the border, then he could be running.
Like if he was running, I feel like he's probably running away.
Yeah, running away with.
You probably think he's running away, but like Jonathan said, is he it your issue? Is it your problem?
No.
No?
I mean, they don't really.
So are you gonna really do anything?
If he's gonna keep
No.
If you see
running,
someone
no
running, if
problem.
you see an African American running, you're a northerner, are you going to really do anything?
You might, cause you might want to
No,
slave
probably
if
just
you're
gonna
a
walk
slave,
with it.
if you're forced slave. labor.
Well, in this case, you're not for slavery.
Because you're
Just
trying
don't
to
have any
win.
slaves. You're probably not gonna do anything. So, with this fugitive slave law, with these fugitive slave laws, this would, what's a good description? What would you say, Mr. Jones? Good way that you would put it.
The fugitive slave laws were something that had been put into effect and were never enforced. And with the growing movement, the abolitionist movement, Southerners were afraid that their slaves would continue to run away to the North. So they wanted stricter, stronger fugitive slave laws put in effect with stronger consequences. If you saw a slave run across your property and you didn't stop him, you would have to pay the price. They're doing this because they're afraid that the North the abolitionist movement is going, and they're going to help some more African Americans out that are running away. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Next, after this abolitionism that's growing, California wanted to join the Union as a free state. So they want to be a free state. And Washington, D.C. wanted to ban slavery in the nation's capital. Now, in the North at this time, is slavery completely done away with?
No.
No, it's not. It's not. D.C. is wanting to ban slavery in the capital. By banning slavery, does that mean slavery altogether, or is that the selling and purchasing of slaves?
All together.
The selling and purchasing.
The selling and purchasing. Think about this. With D.C. D.C. is what? It's our nation's.
Capital.
It's our nation's capital. There's a lot of ambassadors, a lot of people from foreign countries that come to our capital. Even today, if you go to D.C., you're going to see people from all around the world. Now, what would you think if you were an ambassador, if you're from some other country, and you come to our nation's capital, if you come to the U.S. capital, and you're looking down the road and you're seeing these auction blocks, there's these African Americans that are being sold, what are you going to think of the U.S.?
They
This is
are
wrong,
bad
I could
people.
incorporate myself with them.
You might think this is wrong, but what'd you say, Leighton?
That this is bad, like, these are bad people.
Is it going to make the U.S. look bad?
Yeah.
It's probably going to make the U.S. look bad. So the Washington, D.C. is going to have a ban on the selling and purchasing of slaves. And, or at least, in the nation's capital. So, there's a compromise known as the Compromise of 1850. And the person that proposes this is someone that you've heard of before. What's his name? Henry Clay. What's his nickname? No, not Henry.
The great
Compromise.
compromiser,
Good.
very
The great
good.
compromiser. So Henry Clay is going to propose this Compromise of 1850. And it's got 4 parts. The first one says that California would become a free state. This is all going to be together. First part is California becomes a free state. Number 2 says that all territories would have no limits on slavery. Before we get too far, think about it from the North and the South perspective. A compromise is what? We said it earlier.
Sacrificing?
It's an agreement in which both sides have to what?
Sacrificing.
Good. So both sides sacrifice. So we're going to have the North and we're going to have the South. So the very first one said that California would become what kind of state?
Free.
It'd be a free state. So who wins on that one? Is it North or South? The North. The second one says that all new territories would have no limits on slavery. So all of this land up here would have no limits on slavery. So is that benefiting more the North or the South?
South.
Good. number 3 says that the slave trade, keyword trade, but not slavery itself, would be illegal in Washington, D.C. So going back to what I just said, slavery is still legal, but the slave trade is not in D.C. So you can't, you can no longer sell your slaves or purchase slaves on the streets in D.C. So who is that benefiting?
The
But
South, because they get to keep their slaves.
It's kind of both. If you have to choose one, probably the North. But is slavery gone altogether?
No.
No. So you can kind of see the compromise. You can see how it's benefiting both sides on this one. For this case, we'll just go ahead and say North. And then finally, Clay is pushing for stronger fugitive slave codes, or stronger slave codes, a Fugitive Slave Act. So we said fugitive slave codes or acts do what? Zach? Keeps you from running away. So it keeps the slaves from running away. If you are a white person and you see a slave and you don't do anything, what's going to happen to you?
You're gonna go to jail.
You could get in trouble. You could possibly go to jail. So in this compromise of 1850, Clay is pushing for stronger slave codes. So this benefits the North or the South? The South.
Oh,
Good.
wow.
Good. So right here, this one, we'll just say that's about half a mark. Because that benefited about half the North and half the South. So if you look at it at the end, who seems to
So,
get the most out of this compromise?
South.
Good, so the South. Taylor actually, he's in office, but he does something that Harrison did. What was that when he was in office?
He got
What
sick
Harrison did?
and died.
He did a speech outside while it was cold.
And he got sick and he died. Taylor actually does the same thing. He doesn't give a, I forget how long the speech was. He doesn't do that, but he does die in office. And so Fillmore becomes the next president of the U.S. And what did he do? He favors the compromise. So, compromise pass? Okay. It actually doesn't. The plan fails. But Senator Stephen Douglas of Illinois, he devises a plan, and he divides the plan into parts. So there's 4 different parts. He divides it so that each individual part goes through Congress and gets voted on. So we would have a vote on whether or not California would become a free state. That's one individual vote. Number 2, all territories would have no limits on slavery. Number 3, number 4, so on. So each one went in individually. And Mr. Jones, would you mind taking over right here for the rest of the compromise of 1850, please?